Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Teal Tinted Glasses podcast. Sorry that it's been a little bit since we've been back last. We've had some scheduling things that should be resolving now. Jerk's with us. I know, Jerk, you've been relocating, so I know that's been an issue for us. But I think now that things are starting to settle down, I think we're going to start getting down to a pretty normal cadence again and start getting these things out on the regular is my goal. So I apologize for the fact that we haven't done this in basically a month. We keep saying that's not going to happen again, and here we are. But with me tonight is the Mr. One and Only Hockey Jerk. Hockey Jerk, how you doing?
Edmonton, Buffalo, and Carolina are all towards the top of the NHL in 2019. Do not adjust your sets.
Do not adjust your sets. I know, and who saw this coming? I didn't.
I mean, you think at some point that these teams are going to turn it around, right? But I mean, I feel like the curve that all of these teams have taken it's a very sharp one. Like Carolina is, whatever, but like especially Buffalo and Edmonton, like all of a sudden they're just these dominant teams who look like if they missed the playoffs, it would be like the wrong thing,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's weird because, like when you look at all these teams, some of these teams we've been expecting to turn the corner for a while. Like the Hurricanes doesn't really surprise me because they were a good team last year. The Edmonton Oilers, like that's an interesting one because obviously like they were pretty much a tire fire last year. Buffalo, I feel like Buffalo's a team that is kind of like they're my Coyotes of the East. They're a team that I continuously say are going to get better and then let me down in the end.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment, actually. I mean, you think they had the 10-game win streak last year, and then from there, like literally the wheels just blew off the bus, right? And
right.
I don't know because they're still like that, especially for them. Like their goaltending, I'm still very questionable with, but it's working out for them now, and they're just getting contributions from everybody on that lineup, so it's a perfect storm for them.
Right. And it's like, and I think that's like the cautionary tale too, because I thought like, Buffalo came out of the gate really, really hard last year. And by the end, they were nowhere to be found. Right. And that's kind of like the cautionary tale. It's like, you don't want to read too much into these first little stretch of games because, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And it's, a lot of things can change very drastically from now to the end. And, the one thing I do like about Buffalo's situation though, and how Buffalo is doing really well is that, the one question you always get whenever it's time to talk about, coaching changes or whatever. And usually like the first question people throw in your face is like, well, who are you going to replace him with? Right? Like anytime you say like a coach should go. And I hate that statement because it's like, hockey fans, this coach needs to go. Also hockey fans. Oh, you think he needs to go? Who does he need to replace him with? Why, also hockey fans, oh, it's just an old boys club. There's all these retreads, and then it's like you say some coach needs to be fired and automatically there's the demand of, well, who are you going to replace him with, Ian? What, like who? Give me a name or shut up, basically. And I like what Buffalo's doing because like Ralph Krueger, I'm not saying is, the best coach ever, and maybe things don't, maybe things fall apart for this team down the road, but Ralph Krueger as a coach is like one of the most unconventional coaching hires as they come.
Well, yeah, and I think you're 100% right, and I think you start with the fact that, over the last 5 years he was coaching soccer. Like he wasn't even really involved with the game of hockey the last few years.
He had that 50 games in Edmonton.
Yeah, he coached Edmonton during the half season, and like then after that, yeah, like I don't recall what team in Europe, what soccer team in Europe he was involved with, but like he was, between that lockout season and the World Cup of Hockey a few years ago, he was not even involved with hockey at all.
Yeah. So it's I like it from like the unconventional standpoint. I like the fact where, it's an interesting hire, because I think that, like, I am in the family of people that says, look, I'm not a fan of, like, the retread, right? Like the Todd McClellan on his third team, you know what I mean? Like
Alain Vigneault as well.
The Alain Vigneaults, the Todd McClellans who, really, what did Todd McClellan do to earn a third job? Not really anything. Right? Alain Vigneault is another guy who's been around maybe far too long. Even a guy like Mike Babcock, who I think would get another job if Toronto fired him pretty much immediately. Mm-hmm. Like some of the shine is worn off there, and it'll be interesting to see, Joe Quenneville's another guy who I think, he's more in the category of guys who I think are worthy of getting that second job or third job, but it's going to be interesting to see what he does in Florida this year.
Yeah. And I think, just going back when you mentioned Mike Babcock, I think especially lately, I feel like a lot of words, whether or not they're true, have kind of been spoken about Babcock that paint him in kind of a negative light. So I am curious, if he were to be fired by Toronto, I am curious as to how quick he would find a new job, just because of those words that have been said about him. But yeah, same thing with Joel Quenneville. For anyone who caught the Panthers game when they played the Avalanche, they threw up a graphic, and he's coached. This is his fourth team he's coached, and obviously he's very successful. He's got 3 Stanley Cups. He's got a Jack Adams as well. But I mean, it's like, square peg, round hole, right? I mean, at
Absolutely.
What point does, you can put the same guy in a bunch of different markets, and, you may get some different results, or you may get the same results. And that's kind of why when a lot of people are clamoring for the coach to be fired, I always come back with the coach doesn't lace up the skates, right?
True. Oh, no, absolutely.
You can put, a prime example, right? Like Todd McClellan, I don't think he was the best coach in Sharks history, but he was a decent coach, and, was very successful, had a lot of wins, but then he goes to Edmonton with the same philosophy, even the same assistant coaches, and it's a disaster, right? And so coaching is a very hard thing to quantify. Absolutely, if you have a coach who's like just an idiot, or like a rude person, 100% get rid of them. But I always hate the idea that, like, a team falls flat on their face 10 games in solely because of the players, and like the coach is the one who gets the axe.
One who gets the axe, sure.
Yeah, I mean, especially like you could have the best coach ever, right? It's why, people say Joel Quenneville is the best coach ever, but he's been fired thrice now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
well, I think that's the other thing too, is I think that going into that job, like, this isn't your lifetime appointment. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's one thing, like coaches do have a shelf life, and I think that's an important thing that people have to factor in, right? Is, eventually, the coach does get stale, the players tune them out, and they need a new voice in the room. And I do believe there's that to an extent. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not trying to, like, tie this into the Sharks in any way. I just think it's an interesting overall conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can even take that idea, take it out of sports, take it to any other profession. Sure. If you have a boss who, like I said, if you have a boss who's a dick, you're not really going to want to go to work because you have to work for this guy.
Yeah.
And I think too, a lot of the reason why you see teams, have this resurgence when they get a new coach is because there's that idea of, like, oh, we're finally playing for somebody that's not going to piss us off, and mm-hmm. it obviously gets the juices flowing even more. But it's coaching is very tough, It's,
oh, absolutely.
The GM, brings in the players who underperform, and then the players underperform, and the coach loses their job.
Yep.
It's just how it is.
So let's get, like, I think, it's a good thing, and I think it's something that we'll definitely circle back to down the road here, but we probably get started with, the Sharks, I think, first is probably a good place to start here. So the Sharks get off to a rough start. They're currently 3-5-0 on the season, which feels like it's
where
been
we want to be.
A month.
It's right where we want to be.
Absolutely. It feels like it's been like more than a month. Like, it feels like it's been forever. And we played 8 games, and it feels like it's just been a lifetime, because these games have put ages, like years on my life.
I think I don't know about you or about anybody else who's listening, but I know like for me, like I'm pretty much guaranteed, unless I have something else going on, I pretty much watch at least 2 games a day.
Right.
And so yeah, like when the Sharks played against Buffalo, I was literally sitting watching the game, and I'm like, what month is it? Like it's so early, but I feel like I've watched so much puck already in a short amount of time.
Fair enough. Okay, so the Sharks they got off to a rough start, and then I think they kind of rounded into form. Like after that fourth game in, they started to really kind of put things together.
It's once they brought old boy back.
Once they brought an old boy, the old boy. Yeah, once they brought back old boy, it was fine again. They Patrick Marleau signed. What did you think of this of the Patrick Marleau deal? The 2-way $700K.
I think from a business perspective, from a dollar perspective, from an expectation perspective, I'm fine with it. If you can get him to sub-million and he'll put up, 12 goals, I'll keep my mouth shut, right? But if it was going to be a whole situation where it's like, well, he's back because, of the history and he loves it here and XYZ, I'm not about it. But I think for the dollar and for the expectations, I think it was a good move. As we've seen, with playoff teams in the last forever, you can never have too many bodies because somebody's going to get hurt at some point. We kind of saw this a little bit earlier in the season, on the defensive end, obviously, Prout, Šimek, Middleton all going down. You're going to need bodies. And I haven't hated what I've seen from him. I think all summer it was kind of, something that we talked about on this podcast was, okay, you pretty much have Couture and Meier handcuffed together. Who are you going to put with them? And, we all had different ideas of who we think goes with them. But I think so far, the speed of Patrick Marleau, I think, is obviously something that helps Meier and Couture. It allows them to get open and to get into a position where they can get the puck. So I haven't hated it so far, but I think, outside of Couture, that top line has not been very hot.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. Like, I feel like I was super against this, right? Because when the season, before the season started, I was super against it because I wanted to see kind of the do what they said they're going to do. Give the young guys a chance, and see what happens. But they left. I mean, man, they left too many holes open. In my opinion, with hindsight, obviously, like going into the summer, I'm like, oh, well, maybe this guy's going to challenge. And I think this guy has a good chance of doing something in camp. And then no one really did anything in camp. and it got really, really scary, really, really quick. Right. And like, I understand bringing Marleau back. I thought there were some other free agents that I thought I might have kicked the tires on first, but I understand Marleau being the devil, and, so I understood that and really, and he's been fine. I mean, I think he's matched expectations so far. He had a couple of goals in his first game. I think, his game's been solid. So I haven't really been I didn't have the expectation he was going to come back and be a point a game guy.
Well, still early.
It's still early, but I don't have that expectation, right? And I think that's the important 100%. Thing is the expectation. Like, I don't expect him to be a point a game guy. And really, for $700K, hell, I'm happy with any output we get from him, right? Like, I'm more comfortable with a guy like Patrick Marleau eating $700K than I am with Melker eating almost $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how, because obviously with Peter DeBoer, the lines are always subject to change. I mean, and the NHL in general, let's be honest, there's very few coaches in the league that are going to roll out the same lines, health or no health, from game 1 to game 82. But so far, I mean, as much as I was against the Marleau signing, I can't complain. It's okay. Like, it's been fine.
Yeah.
Like, the expectations for Marleau now versus when he left it's two totally different things, right?
Well, and I think too, could you imagine if say, there was some kind of move or sequence of moves to get Marleau back in Teal, but let's say this all went down before the trade and buyout by the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, if we were paying $6.25,
I'd be angry. livid.
He could score 20 goals and I would hate it, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I think the way that it all shook out was obviously, I think, was the best case scenario.
Yeah.
And I think who he's playing with the right guys. I mean, obviously there's a familiarity with him and Couture, obviously, but I just think, we've talked about it before, the types of players that these three guys are, they all really complement each other very well. You've got the speed guy, you've got the guy who hits, you got the guy who likes to take shots. I mean, it's all meshes together really well. I think I'm with you. I was against it from day one. Anybody who was happy about it, I made it a point to, throw sand in their face and say no.
See, I tried not to. I saw, like, when it finally happened, I just saw, like, normally I thrive on being this guy that just, like, does that, just kicks the sand in everyone's face and it's like, no, you're dumb. I just, for some reason, when this happened, when it finally went down, I don't know, I've tried to change kind of the way I go about things a little bit this year on social media. I think, like, I'm trying not to not be a jerk, because I think that sometimes I can get in a bad mood and just be a jerk for the sake of being a jerk. But I think, like, I'm trying not to, like, just cry about things nonstop, like the same crap every game nonstop. So I'm trying to, like, find new things to, like, analyze, like, instead of, just speed bagging Peter DeBoer and the Michael Haley of this year, which I guess is Dalton Prout. I'm trying to, like, avoid, like, the easy just speed bags, right? Where you just, like, walk in and just, bang, 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 bang. Awesome. I'm awesome. See you later. So I'm trying to, like, avoid things like that. And I'm like, I am not swimming up this current. Like, when it's signed, I just saw everyone happy. I'm like, whatever, let them be happy. It's fine. I think it's dumb, but it's, so far it's worked out.
Well, and that was my whole stance too. Like I said, I was very against it, like, from the sentimental factor, and obviously, this was assuming he was going to come back at that 6.25 ticket, which obviously he didn't. But I always stood by it. I said, if he can come in and contribute and be cheap, then, like I said, I'll shut up about it. And so far he's done that, and it's kind of it's been a slow progression. Like, when the signing, if you've ever kind of been like burned or proven wrong by somebody, and all you can do is just, like, smile about it. That's kind of how I was when he first got signed, and now slowly I'm kind of being like, okay, maybe this is working out. So we'll see, but it's still early.
Yeah, and it's funny though, because it's like, it seems like, obviously, like, that's the catalyst for things turning around, and you gotta, like, in your opinion, like, cause it really, the Sharks did start playing better, like, to a man started playing better, where before Marleau was, like, I mean, those first games were awful, like, just awful. Like, really, I would go on after Dirk and try and find something positive to say, and I couldn't.
Right.
But you don't want to, like, freak out at the same time, so it's, like, 3 games in, right? Like, is that like do you think it, like, was, like, maybe, like, a shot across the bow a little bit for the team? Like, what do you think is, like, because obviously, like, Marleau gets signed, and obviously that helps, from a depth perspective, but I mean, the whole team kind of starts playing better at the same time, and I wonder if there was more that happened around that time, than we know, right? Because it seems like it's just such a weird thing where it just snap, it's fixed, right?
Well, and I think too, I like this from a perspective of, you're kind of, if you're Doug Wilson and you're Peter DeBoer, you're kind of, in a way, you're sticking to your word, because you're saying, we're going to give the young guys to the chance. And the philosophy with young guys has been the same for what feels like forever is, if you're a young guy who's going to come in and take away a roster spot, you need to be better than the people around you. Yeah. And unfortunately, Bergman and Urtyke, and I liked what they were doing, from a just being a smart hockey player standpoint. But obviously, when the puck's not going in, it's, that's all that people look at. And so I think them bringing in Marleau is their way of saying, like, look, we gave you the chance and you didn't really run with it. You didn't prove that you were better than everybody else here. So you know, this is what we have to do. And I think in a way also, you know, it's kind of saying like, you know, it'll light a fire a little bit, because if you're, you know, if you're one of these guys who's 19, 20, 21, 22, and you're thinking, you know, it's a slam dunk, you're going to be in the NHL, and then they bring this guy who's 40 into the lineup, and it's going to be like, well, how the hell did this happen? I need to be better. So
Yeah.
I think we saw that too. I mean, you know, Vince, G, and Kevin and I, you know, we all had a lot of good things to say about Noah Gregor in the rookie faceoff, but beyond that, had a pretty underwhelming training camp. And then he comes into the to play his first NHL game against Buffalo, and he was flying.
Yeah.
Noah Gregor was flying. I thought he was going to get his first goal. And I think, you know, to have something dangled in front of you and say, here you go, take it if you want it, and then it's gone, I think it makes them want it even more. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more young guys try and get that spot, you know, in the bottom six, but also if we see them actually make an impact, because especially with, you know, Chemlevsky and Chekhovich and Blichfeld, we have not seen the best from them yet.
No.
And I think having that fire lit under him, I mean, if it were me, I'd be like I said, I'd be like, this old guy took my spot. This is BS. Bump this. I'm going to play better.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it's obviously it's positive, because I couldn't even imagine if that trend continued. Like, I couldn't imagine like doing this show now, because it'd be awful. Like,
imagine if we were 0-8.
Oh, like, or like we're the, I don't know, the Minnesota Wild. Imagine if this was a Minnesota Wild podcast. One, we'd have no fans because no one cares.
And we'd be 8 years into a 13-year marriage to Zach Parise and Ryan Suter.
Oh man, that's just rough. Absolutely.
Thank you, max term limits. That's all I'm going to say.
One question I do have, though, just in regards to all this stuff with, what am I trying to say here? With like, because obviously there was like a lot of spots, and, you know, a lot of money has been thrown around. Do you feel that maybe Doug Wilson has gambled a little too much with this team, and like, how, you know what I mean? Because you got a lot of big contracts on this team, which right. You know, obviously that is kind of the way the league is trending, and I get that. But then you had a lot of spots opened, that you were hoping that some of your kids were gonna jump into. Has Doug Wilson made like maybe one too many gambles here? Or or is this a situation where I'm letting perfect be the enemy of good?
It's tough, because I don't think the players that we've gambled on, I don't think they're bad players, but I do see where you're coming from, because, you know, and I stand by what I said. I know Kevin Lacey agrees with me as well, but you know,
I don't know if Kevin's going to say anything. I know he's here, so hi, Kevin.
Don't give him a platform.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding. We love you, Kevin.
We do.
You know, he and I have had conversations many times, you know, obviously pre Erik Karlsson re-signing, but it was, you know, if Erik Karlsson is coming back, Burns is going, you know, and I think when you talk about, you know, gambling one too many times, I do think it's great if you can have 3 Norris Trophy caliber defensemen, except when you have to pay them, right? And I don't necessarily think Erik Karlsson was a bad gamble. I signed that contract every day because he's a hell of a player. But I do think that it's a tough spot to be in when you've got 3 defensemen who are all making a lot of money, and, you know, I'm not saying that Pavelski was going to come back even if Erik Karlsson didn't resign, but like that cap space, I mean, you could have brought back a Gus Nyquist, you know, you could have maybe thrown everything at somebody like Artemi Panarin, or picked up, you know, a cheaper depth guy, right? Say a Ryan Dzingel or a Michael Furlan, something like that. And I feel like I'm all over the place. But to your point, I think he may have gambled just a little bit too much, but I don't necessarily put that in Erik Karlsson. I more put that on like having 3 defensemen who are making a lot of money.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to say like on a specific thing. I just like, I wonder if it's like, okay, you know, obviously we've got a lot of money tied up. I think, you know, the Timo Meier contract's a hell of a gamble, to be completely honest. It looks fine. I know I get in this argument all the time. People are like, Ian, it's 6 million AAV. What the hell's the matter with you? Like, well, how could you not like this deal? And it's like, yeah, but that last year he makes $10 million. That's a $10 million qualifying offer.
Yeah. I've seen that concern brought up. I don't foresee it being an issue, to be honest.
I don't know, because here's the thing, right? Like, it's hard because we don't know what cap inflation is going to do.
Right.
So you don't know what the cap inflation is going to be. Like, who knows? Maybe, you know, every year, like 7 million's the new 5 million, and
right.
You know, and 11 million's the new 9 million. So I don't know what cap inflation is going to be, and maybe even if Timo Meier doesn't completely knock it out of the park in 4 years, maybe he's, you know, maybe at that point 10 million's the new 8 million.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we've seen it, especially the last, you know, like I said, the last 6 or 7 years. And I know I make this comparison all the time, but I remember thinking back then, you know, like 2010, 11, 12, like if you made a penny over 6 million, you were immediately overpaid. And, you know, and now, like, you know, I look at somebody like Brent Burns who's making $8 million, and I think he's only making $8 million. So, you know, cap inflation is a very real thing. And if what the experts say are true, then a lot of this won't matter in 5 years. But
no, and that's true.
But, you know, that the key word in all of that is if, you know, and nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone in the chat here. Jerry said Vlasic's contract is only $1 million less than Burns and runs through 2026. Why not expose him for Seattle instead of Burns? Because he has a no movement clause, which means you cannot put him on the docket, whereas Brent Burns only has a no trade.
I think losing Brent Burns, any way you slice it, I think losing Brent Burns would be a huge loss to the team.
Oh, I agree.
Like I a lot has been said, and rightfully so, about his defensive woes earlier on when he switched back to defense. But I think since the beginning of last year, I think Brent Burns has gotten a lot better playing defense, and I still feel like, you know, if it's the last 2 minutes of a game and the Sharks are up by 1, I feel fine with him out there in the defensive zone. You know, I think he's gotten that much better, and I would argue that Brent Burns is probably, I mean, you know, forwards, I think, you know, there's a lot of dynamic forwards who maybe would have exception to this, but I think Brent Burns is top 5 in the NHL, like, just player, you know? I mean, how many defensemen are point per game over an entire season, right?
And here's the thing too, right? Like, with Burns and Karlsson, like, obviously they both get a lot of crap for the defensive game. That's not what they're paid for. Like, right. You do want them to be a little more defensively responsible, but that's not what they get paid for.
No. You're when you're a Burns or an Erik Karlsson, you're paid for points.
Right. And, you know, I thought, and so far, I thought, you know, they both kind of had a rough start to the season. Obviously Karlsson making more money than Burns, so Karlsson's going to take, you know, he's going to wear the goat horns a lot more often, but I feel like he wears the goat horns just when he shouldn't. Like, I feel like, and I'm not going to, like, again, I don't want to fight the current here, but like, I just feel like and maybe it's the price difference, right? But I'm like, you know, when Karlsson gave that puck away and you know, Sorensen kind of stopped on the play, it went to the Buffalo player, puck goes in the net, right? Twitter goes nuts. You know, the Sharks are trying to get the tying goal, and Burns coughs up the puck at the blue line. Crickets.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I get it from some perspectives. I get, like, you know, it's Erik Karlsson, unfortunately, because of the money of his contract, and because I think some people can be a little too attached to the players, which I get. Look, people are fans, and obviously, you know, they're fans of the team, but they also get to be fans of players, and I get that. But I feel like it's just, I don't know. I think some of the criticism of Erik Karlsson so far has been really unfair
Yeah,
it's been unfair.
I mean, and I agree with that, and you have to recall, you have to recall as well, like Erik Karlsson is only 5 months removed from having his groin reconstructed, and I already know that that's just throwing gasoline on the people who say that he's injury prone. But like, okay, 3 injuries in 11 years, I don't call that injury prone.
No.
I think a lot of people, I think, and I think to a degree there are some instances where Erik Karlsson does deserve to get some flack.
I mean, I am not saying the man is perfect and deserves no hate at all. I just think he gets a lot of hate just because by default,
because of how much he makes, right?
Right. And by default, he gets hate by default. It's just like, oh, this is going wrong. Well, I guess it's Erik Karlsson's fault.
Yeah. And Christine's saying it's harder for fans to accept high salary transfers versus homegrown players, but you got to remember Brent Burns is a transfer as well. Now, he's obviously been in San Jose longer than Erik Karlsson has, but he's still a transfer. And I don't, like I said,
but he's been here forever though. Like Brent Burns has been here for
right. I mean, he might as well have been drafted here.
Sure,
but I mean, I didn't even know who he was until he joined the Sharks. That's how insignificant his time in Minnesota was.
Right.
But as we found out, Minnesota tends to do that to people.
I don't get this. I gotta address the chat here. I don't get this diva persona that's been etched out. Like, this is not like Erik Karlsson's been in this league a long time. If a guy's a diva, generally he's been called out by players. Like, I've never heard a player call Erik Karlsson a diva. And if you can point me out to a player other than Drew fucking Doughty, I'll listen.
I don't think Erik Karlsson cares because he's got his new 2 Norris trophies plugging his ears.
Well, and not even, but I don't get that though. Like, this idea that's come out, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody here. But this as an idea because it's something that gets said a lot, but I've never heard this. I've never heard anybody say, like, that's never been the reputation. This diva talker and Erik Karlsson is like this year new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, it's never been a thing before. It was never a thing in Ottawa. Maybe some jilted Ottawa fans after he left. But like, you don't hear, like, players have always spoken really high. Like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things, like, when we do this, okay, like, when we do this, and, I don't know the guy personally. And, yeah, I'm not in the room. So I'm not going to say, like, for sure, okay, like, I'm not going to tell you he's not a diva, but I've never, like, if a guy is a diva, like, you've heard about it by now. Like, I just feel like this criticism is new, and I don't get it. Like, and I'm listening, I hear you for pods, but I mean, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to be mean or rude here, but, like, you I don't even know how to put this politely. Like, I don't want to be a jerk here. I'm just, like, obviously you don't like the player. Like, are you not a little, like, you don't think that's coloring your vision a little bit? Like, I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. I mean, look at you can fan the way you want to fan. I don't know. I think I've never heard this about him like this. And so all I have to go on is basically you go on what you hear from other players. And if a guy's a jerk, other players will generally let you know.
Yeah. You think Drew Doughty and Matt Tkachuk.
Right.
It's tough too, and there is a degree of, obviously, like, his first season with the Sharks was obviously very tumultuous.
Sure.
He got hurt, and I don't like so all the stuff that went on. You got to remember too, like, the truest of true professionals still gets things still weigh on them. You got to remember, he lost a child, and his family was bullied, and moving somewhere new after knowing somewhere else was life. Now, I'm not saying these are excuses for playing poorly or anything like that, but you can be the truest of true professionals and you're still going to have these things weigh on you. And I think that obviously contributed to his tough start with his first season with the Sharks. And obviously he gets hurt as well. So he's not really doing himself any favors to endear himself with the fans. But I think you kind of have to throw away everything that happened last season and look and say, okay, here's Erik Karlsson on the first year of his new extension. What is he going to do for us? He's healthy. His family life is rock solid. You're like a lot of people, and I'm definitely guilty of doing this myself at times, are looking at that 53 game span and saying, why the hell did we trade this guy? But there's still so much to be seen. Right. And it's all a matter of circumstance. It's all what's going on, because if the Sharks, let's flip it around. If the Sharks started the season 4-0, nobody's saying anything.
Right.
Karlsson could have given up just howler after howler, but if the Sharks are 4-0, nobody cares. So I don't know. But anyways, the point I was going to make earlier is we were talking about value of cap, right, and value of players. So you think, I remember when the Brent Burns contract was signed, it was like $8 million in this climate. It's going to blow up in the Sharks' face. And he was signed to that under a $73 million cap. The cap's now at 81.5. So I think that's just another example how, like, over time, the salary cap is going to go up. And even if the NHL has a down year in terms of the salary cap rising like it did this past summer, like, it still went up $2 million. I mean, that's a roster player right there that you're essentially getting for free.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's definitely a fair thing. I'm gonna wander off the Erik Karlsson thing now, because I'm not gonna try and sell Erik Karlsson to you. I mean, I look at some people. You guys that are listening, and anyone listening really. I mean, I'm not gonna tell you how to fan. I'm not gonna tell you what's worth your hard-earned dollar. I'm not going to tell you, like, those are decisions that you have to make. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to tell you, I don't think someone's less of a fan because they suddenly decide they don't want to renew their seasons. I mean, you got to do what's best for you, your financial situation, your happiness. That's fine. And I'm not going to argue with people. That's just all there is to it. At the end of the day, I'm going to give you my opinion. None of us are here. Me, Kevin, Jerk, Drew, like, we're not here to, like, force our opinion on you. At the end of the day, we're going to give you our opinion because that's how we do a podcast. That's the whole point of a podcast, I guess. And then you're going to do whatever you want with our opinion. And that's fine. We're not always going to agree. That's cool. So I definitely don't take me here as trying to force my will on you. I'm not trying to force my will on you. If you don't like Erik Karlsson, then that's fine. I'm not gonna fight with you for an hour on that. And it's fine. You're allowed to not like Erik Karlsson. It is what it is. So let's move on anyway. Any players so far that have maybe stood out in a bad way? And I think it's hard now because everyone's kind of picked up their place so much. Is there anyone that you're still a little bit concerned about, even though the wheels have kind of gone back on the track?
Yeah, and I'm not. And when I say this individual's name, this is not to say that they've been bad. This is to say that they've underwhelmed.
Okay.
So I don't know about you, but I was expecting 40 goals from Timo Meier. And right now he's on pace for, I think, 19 or 20. Now, obviously, we've seen that, especially last season, he can explode for a lot of goals in a short amount of time. But like what I was saying earlier, I think, if you look at just the stats, and obviously we're only 8 games in, everything can change. This could all change by the time the Sharks play Buffalo on Tuesday, and by all means, you could tell me that I'm an idiot at hockey_jerk on Twitter. But Logan Couture is having the best season of his career right now, at least the best start of his season in his career. And, Patrick Marleau adds an element of speed to that line. I'm kind of surprised that more pucks aren't going in for Timo Meier, just because I think, with how well Couture and Meier have played with him, I think that, I think the puck should be on his stick at least more often than it has been. Like, I don't even feel like he's gotten really a whole lot of shots off, let alone goals. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see more from him, just goal-wise. I would, considering Barclay Goodrow's got more goals than him right now. But at the same time, it's not me saying that he's playing bad. It's just so much that I want him to play better. I can't really think of anybody who is bad per se. I mean, obviously the easy target is Aaron Dell, but Aaron Dell didn't really get any favors in the game he started. And it's
Kevin makes an excellent point in the chat.
I wonder, 100%. That could be it. I mean,
just for the people listening, Kevin Lacey at Kevin Lacey 22. I wonder if matchups play into this for Meier, and I think that's a part of it, because Timo Meier is definitely drawing the other team's best defenders at this point.
Yeah, that's true, and I think like the Sharks had more offensive weapons, to Kevin's point. Where, okay, if the Couture-Meier line's not working, roll out Hertl and Kane. Oh, if that's not working, put out Thornton and LeBanc, and you can rotate in Pavelski or Nyquist or Donskoy or whomever. Now you have less options, so you're relying more on Meier and Couture and even Hertl. Hertl had an abysmal start to the season, but he's on a stupid run right now. I think he's got like 7 points in his last 3 games or something, so he's obviously figured it out. But I think Kevin makes an excellent point where Meier is being relied on more and he's drawing tougher matchups. I think it's kind of contributing that a little bit, but I think it's all about comfort. I think once he gets in that comfort level, I think it'll be fine, because we kind of saw the same thing last season as well, where he started out really rolling, and then around December, January, he was still with Couture, but they took Hertl off that line. And they tried, Donskoy there, and I think they put LeBanc there. They put a bunch of guys there, and he kind of struggled a little bit. And then once he caught fire again, he was on it. So I think with Meier, you just have to give him time. And the only other guy who stands out to me is Lukas Radil. I mean, he's such a big guy. You know what I mean? He's 6'4". He's the second tallest guy on the team, but he plays so small. And I feel like his shot, I feel like he doesn't unleash it as much as he can, or as much as he should. I just feel like there's so much ceiling for him to get to that he's just not reaching. And yeah, I think even though he is legitimately sick and can't play, even if he was healthy, I probably wouldn't be playing him anyways.
He's a guy who I'm kind of surprised has stuck in the lineup as well as he has. I think your Taken has had some problems adjusting to the game a little bit. I've liked what I've seen from Bergman. Bergman's a guy that I would probably put in over Radil at this point. The guy who, to answer my own question, I guess, the guy that I've been kind of concerned with, and maybe less so now that the games have kind of gotten together, I think he's gotten going, but Marc-Edouard Vlasic's been a little bit of a concern for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I noticed earlier on he was very slow to react to certain things.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just like he's a slow. I'm not saying like Marc-Edouard Vlasic's been completely abysmal, but it's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on through most of the going forward the next couple of games, because last night Brendan Dillon actually played not many more. I think it was like a minute more than Marc-Edouard Vlasic, but I think that's a really interesting change, because that would never have happened 1-2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way Brendan Dillon's playing more minutes than Marc-Edouard Vlasic, period. And it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of plays itself out over the course of the season. because like obviously like Peter DeBoer has got a lot of trust in Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and we know that obviously, you know, Brendan Dillon's a guy that it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds for, because obviously like right now with the cap situation being what is, he's probably not coming back. And you're looking for guys like obviously on the left side, you're looking for the guys like Šimik and the Ferraros to basically play him out of a spot at this point. But I'm not sold that's going to happen. Like I'm really, and this actually kind of dovetails into a question we got from our friend Like a Tiger here on Discord. You know, he said thoughts on the D pairs with Prout and Šimik coming in. Will Ferraro go back down to the CUDA for longer stints to get more minutes? You know, like, and it's honestly, it's a fascinating question because obviously Brendan Dillon's been, I think, great this year. Like Brendan Dillon's been, you want to talk about like positive on the defense, like net positive. Brendan Dillon for me has been a net positive on the defensive side. Mario Ferraro's been outstanding.
Yeah, I think, I've said it since the beginning of last year. Brendan Dillon has been the Sharks' best defenseman, and I'm emphasizing the word defense.
Right.
He's been the best defenseman, and I think it is, if the Sharks do lose him, which barring a change looks like that will happen on July 1 next year, it's going to be a huge loss. Now, you know, Šimek coming in, obviously Ferraro coming in, it'll soften that blow, but I just think, you know, to borrow a phrase, you know, I think Dillon has been steady Eddie for the Sharks defense, especially playing with EK65. I mean, you talk about a pairing that has a lot of chemistry together. I mean, Dillon, you know, in the 5+ years we've had Dillon, he's gotten better every year, and he's just like ridiculously outstanding as a defenseman and as a skater. And
you have to pay more attention. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, I know, like especially with Dillon, like Dillon is really good at all the little things. You know what I mean? Like not to get too much into being a coach, but you know, you got an odd man rush or even a 2-on-2 or a penalty kill or something. You push your guys to the outside, you box them out, you keep the puck away from the middle. Dillon is dialed in on that aspect every time. Like he knows where he needs to be. He knows his assignments, and he's just dialed in, you know, and I don't want the fans to think that I don't like Marc-Edouard Vlasic, because that's not true. I love Marc-Edouard Vlasic. I have a Marc-Edouard Vlasic jersey, true story. But I would be more upset if we lost Dillon than if we lost Vlasic. And that's just the way it is. Who knows? Maybe that'll change in here. And as for Mario,
I was going to just agree with you. Like right now, and obviously again, 8 games in, you know, I think Brendan Dillon was one of the bright spots, even when things were wrong. Like, and I'm nervous. I would really like to see a kind of a deep dive on who's drawing the tougher assignments still. Is it Vlasic or is it Dillon? Because if it's Dillon, then dear God, like the Sharks have put themselves in a terrible, terrible corner.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And the thing working in the Sharks' favor is obviously the cap's going to go up again. It'll probably go up the same that it did last year, but obviously that's in their favor. The Paul Martin buyout comes off the books. But
do you want to put all that free money into your decor?
I mean,
yeah. 4D making that much money.
I mean, on one side of the coin, I mean, if you're stopping everything, then, you know, it's fine. But I mean, just looking at cap friendly, you know, as it all shakes out right now, the Sharks could afford to bring Brendan Dillon back and probably be okay. However, financially, I don't know if that's the smartest decision unless you move out of contract. And yeah, it's tough. We'll see. But I do want to talk about Mario Ferraro as well, because you've said he's outstanding. 100% I agree with you there. I think he is eventually going to go to the Barracuda just because of roster spots. And it's truly unfortunate that he's going back, because he absolutely deserves to be in the NHL. He's a very smart player, very good, especially, you know, the Sharks game that I've gotten to see live this year. I sat, you know, I sat parallel to the blue line, and you just watch him skate, whether he's breaking the puck out or whether he's coming back on D. His skating is just fluid. He knows where he needs to be. He's got really smart defensive awareness, whether it's a 2-on-1 or whether you've got a guy bringing in the puck who's trying to dump it in. He's very much like Brendan Dillon, where he just always knows where he needs to be and knows what he needs to do. And, even he's, like I said, he's going to go back to the Barracuda. It's inevitable, but
yeah,
it's not going to be for very long.
It's going to be interesting because, obviously Shimmick's going to come back in, and obviously everyone's expecting big things from Shimmick. But if he stumbles out of the gate, Shimmick could very quickly wind up, putting on Tim Heed's leash and collar.
Yeah, that's another thing. I feel like I'm Tim Heed's only fan right now.
Yeah, Kevin had another point in the chat that I do want to get to after this. Look what happened to Joakim Ryan last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
If Shimmick, that'd be my concern if I'm Rudy Shimmick right now, because Ferraro's played so well, and you already have Vlasic and Dillon, that are your left shots. They're there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be between Ferraro and Shimmick for that last spot. And then, unless if someone has to play their offhand, if Peter DeBoer says, sorry, Tim Heed, I hate you, to the dungeon, and Ferraro, guess what? You're playing right D now. It's going to be interesting, because I think, it's going to be a really interesting competition to see what happens. And man, it's hard, because I liked what I saw from Shimmick when he was going, but man, I'm going to be kind of pissed if Mario Ferraro ends up on the Barracuda, to be completely honest. And I don't think it would be the worst thing for him. He's going to get, super minutes playing in all situations. It wouldn't be bad for him developmentally, but at the same time, I feel like he should, he's going to be there. He should be there. He should be doing NHL things until he shows that he cannot do NHL things anymore. If he hits the mid-season wall for that sometimes rookies hit, fine, send him to Barracuda, let him regain his confidence. But I don't know, man. It sucks. Right now, I like Shimmick. I really do like Shimmick, but right now I'm like, man, do you really have to come back?
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. Don't get me wrong, I love Shimmick, and humble brag, I did start the Miss You Shimmick hashtag, but you're right. If the D-Corps 1 through 6 stayed the way it is right now all season, I'm not upset. Right?
No.
Vlasic and Burns is obviously proven to be a good pair. Dillon and Carl is obviously a good pair, and you could put Ferraro with me, and he would be fine.
Yeah.
And so, if it stayed the way it is right now, I'd be fine with it. But yeah, Shimmick coming back. It's all about I'm not saying that the Sharks should trade Shimmick, right? But maybe it comes to a situation, where Shimmick comes back and he plays really well, and it's like, oh, this guy's playing well for us, but we don't really need him. Even your best player, you'll trade him if you get a good offer.
Absolutely.
And, we've seen in the past where the Sharks are a playoff team, but they'll still trade away a pending UFA if it can help them somewhere else. And, whether it's Dillon, whether it's Shimmick, whether it's, I don't even know, but Tim Heed, I don't think this roster that we have now, I don't think is going to be the roster come, the last game of the season. So, who knows? It's all very much in flux, and that's a good thing. It's better than having not enough good players.
Absolutely. I want to get to Kevin. Kevin had another question in the chat for us. Johnny Brodzinski got sent down to the Barracuda. Actually, I think he ended up getting assigned to the ECHL. I think when it was all said and done, he went to Orlando. When it was all said and done. But obviously, when Patrick Marleau came in, he was the guy that got sent down. He's obviously he struggled in his career to prove that he's more than an AHL guy. Kevin asks, was there anything you saw or didn't see that resulted in him being sent down to the Barracuda? I'd have to double check. I'm almost positive he ended up on Orlando, on a loan.
I think he was loaned to Orlando.
Oh, he's on the Barracuda. Okay.
I was going to say, I think it may have been just a paper deal because I know he's on
Fair
the
enough.
Barracuda and has been there since he got sent down. He's played very well. I mean, Kevin said 2 goals in 3 games. Kevin and I had a little side bet about Brodzinski that ultimately wasn't fulfilled. But, you know, I think with Brodzinski, I think what it is I think, like I said earlier, you know, you can do all the things right, but if the puck's not going in, nobody's going to care. And I think, you know, playing with Sorensen and playing with Joe Thornton in preseason at training camp, he looked like a match made in heaven for that line. And you get 2 games into the season and all of a sudden he's not cut out for it. And I think he just might be one of those guys, you know, even somebody like a Danny O'Regan who will just tear up the AHL, but they're not really that much better.
Yeah, I mean, to me, my take was he's a guy. Like, he's a guy, you know? And
We're a team.
We're a team. He's a guy. Like, the Sharks have, you know, when Marleau came back, the Sharks had a plethora of guys on the main roster that are just guys. You know, your Lucas Radils of the world. You know, your Brodzinskis, your Radils, your Bergmans, your Tykins. Like, you know, maybe these guys can do something more, but right now they're guys. They're all guys. Like, they're not, there's not a whole lot, in my opinion, that differentiates them significantly. So I wasn't really put off here. Like, if someone had to go down, I thought, you know, I think Radil's the guy that is stuck, and I don't understand that personally. But at the same time, and I was kind of like, really, Radil's going to stay in the lineup, but there's so little, it was like, I kind of made a big deal of it, and then I'm like, what am I doing? There's not this huge chasm of skill between Johnny Brodzinski and Lucas Radil. Like, there isn't.
It's like the Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man. I mean,
right. Yeah. No, exactly. And that's exactly what it is for me. So I don't know if it wasn't so much like, I didn't see anything that said, you know, that he deserved to be there more than anyone else, really. But like, I honestly, you could have thrown a dart at the board, you know, put all those names on it, and whatever name got sent to the AHL. Maybe that's how Peter DeBoer decided it. You know, but obviously with somebody had to go down, and, you know, I was surprised that, because Brodzinski is on a 1-way deal, wasn't he? So I was kind of surprised from that perspective.
He is on I can't remember if Cap Friendly posts that or not. I think it might be a 2-way deal, but I could be
mistaken.
It is
a 2-way. Okay. Yeah, maybe, and maybe that's it. It was a 2-way deal. It was the easiest one to send down financially. I don't know. I mean, I made a bigger deal out of it than I probably should have, considering they're guys. I think, you know, again, he's probably going to be a guy who is going to play, you know, yeah, it's a 2-way. It's a 2-way deal. Okay. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's enough of a chasm there that I'm really, I don't know. I feel like it's really pulling straws, you know, trying to, I don't know.
It's literally like,
it's a fool's errand.
Like, well, you know, probably like, you know, Brent Burns walks in with his hat on and DeBoer's like, can I borrow your hat real quick? And then just pull the name out of it. Like, that's, you know, but you're right. And you and I, the last time we did a show, you know, we kind of talked about it as well, as, you know, we have a lot of guys who are good, but not really anybody who identified themselves as being great.
Right.
And I think we're still seeing that. And you know, obviously there's some recency bias here, but you know who I think has been great so far is Noah Gregor. Like, I don't know how much of the game you caught last night.
He was good.
He was easily the fastest guy out.
You know who's been great this year so far?
I think
you want to talk about great? Barclay Goodrow.
Oh my God, yeah.
For what he brings. Now, again, you know, the thing people are, Barclay Goodrow's a bottom 6 scrub. Like, what are you talking about? But for a bottom 6 scrub, he's been great.
He's if you want to talk about, take statistics out of it and just look at it from who's a hard player and who's played well, Goodrow's probably been the best player on the team this season.
Yeah, like he's been fantastic. I think like that, if you want to talk about guys who've been kind of a revelation this season, and obviously going back to the playoffs, obviously, you know, he's the guy that scored the goal against Vegas that we are going to dick ride for the rest of eternity, apparently, until we win a cup. You know, he scored that goal.
Not a big deal. He's scoring at a 30-goal pace.
Right. I mean, obviously I don't expect that to continue, but
you never know.
You know, for you know, one who, you know, there's a lot of guys. Look at, you know, I think there's a lot of guys, and obviously some guys are going to be more established with the coach than others, right? Obviously the Melker Karlssons of the world are going to get all the rope, you know, and then some. They will, you know, they could wrap the rope around their neck, they could jump out, and they're still going to hit the ground because of how much rope they have.
Top line Melker Karlsson.
Top line Melker Karlsson. So I mean, like, you know, and Melker Karlsson's a guy, and I don't think Melker Karlsson's been terrible this season.
No,
you know, is he worth the $2 million? No, but neither here nor there. But Barclay Goodrow has been just fantastic for what he's brought.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and he, you know, he's been elevated to playing on the third line with Joe Thornton and Marcus Sorensen, and obviously, in the grand scheme of things, third line, fourth line to third line is not that much of an elevation. But if you think of the last 4 or 5 years, how much Goodrow was either, like, his best case scenario was the fourth line.
But yeah, if he was dressed at all.
Yeah. And now he's, you know, you remember that one season where he was called up and down like 100 times just so he could warm up. And, you know, now he's on the third line with Joe Thornton. And before the Sharks got Marleau, he was playing with Hertl and Kane on the second line. Mm-hmm. So clearly DeBoer has, you know, a long rope for him as well. And I think it's deservedly so. I think he's played well. He's played very physical. He's been very smart, especially on the penalty kill, obviously, but he's also chipped in. I mean, you know, his career high is obviously 7 goals, but where he's at right now,
right.
Where he's at right now, 3 goals in 8 games. I mean, that's the quickest he scored 3 goals. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I thought he's played.
I want to know what you think about Dylan Gambrell.
Dylan Gambrell is a guy who I was, you know, Dylan Gambrell's a guy I like. I've liked a lot. I mean, it's no secret on this podcast. I've said plenty of good things about Dylan Gambrell. This is a guy who came in, you know, he came in, he was a Hobey Baker nominee, you know, a couple years back when he was playing, in Denver. I mean, so he's a good player. Like, he has talent. His play as late has been good, but, like the game we ended up winning. I was fed up with Dylan Gambrell. Mm-hmm. You know, the way he was on that first goal. I can't remember who we were playing when, Chicago. That first goal. And I went on Twitter. I'm like, I don't even know why this guy's still on the team at this point. Like, what the hell is Dylan Gambrell? And then, you know, of course, like, that was the time where I finally just kind of threw my hands up in the air and I'm like, I'm done defending this guy. I'm going to throw this guy under the bus. I'm going to run him over like 8 times. And then, of course, by the end of the game, he had actually kind of turned it around. And then he's continued to get better. Look, I've liked what I've seen from him, but, you know, this is a guy who, in my opinion, has to keep going. He has to keep playing at the level he is now, and he has to keep getting better because at his age, like, you know, his age, I mean, he's got to decide if he's going to be an NHLer or an AHLer. And this season, I think, is really going to tell us a lot as to what the long term for Dylan Gambrell is. You see moments of Dylan Gambrell where I think he is outstanding. You know, he's a smart hockey player. I think he tries to get to where, you know, they've tried to have him, you know, kind of sit where Pavs used to sit and try to do Pavs things. And that's not easy. Like, for all the bagging I can sometimes do on Pavelski, like, he was really good at that. You know, and the Sharks could have set plays that revolved around Pavelski sitting there tipping pucks. I see Gambrell as a guy who could, you know, maybe not to the prolificness of Joe Pavelski, the way Joe Pavelski did it, but I think he's a guy who can, you know, he can be your poor man's Joe Pavelski, I think. If the stars align properly. I'm not sold it's going to get there yet, but I've liked what I've seen from him lately. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy who really has to stick this year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you too. That first stretch of games in the season, same thing. I'm like, why the hell is this guy even playing? Mm-hmm. And now, you know, he's been consistently in the lineup the last few games, and, you know, not that it means anything, but he's got 3 assists right now, which is, you know, it's 3 more points than he had the last 2 seasons combined in the NHL. Yep. So I think with him, obviously, you know, one of the biggest adjustments is obviously going from college to the NHL, and I think with him it's been a slow burn, obviously. But I mean, you look at his stats, obviously with Denver and with the Barracuda as well. Like he's
There's
got
a player there.
A lot of skill. There's a lot of skill there. It's a matter of, keeping up with an NHL pace. And I think last year playing 51 games with the Barracuda, I think was obviously good for him to get used to that pace. And it's just a matter of, some guys you just got to do the slow burn with, and that's fine, But as long as there's progression there that you can track, then the slow burn is fine. And I think so far we're seeing it. I mean, like I said, him and Gregor in last night's game was incredibly fun to watch.
Good. I mean,
Gregor, and then, Melker Karlsson is just cool as a cucumber there. Like, he'll do whatever you need him to do. And
Melker Karlsson's a serviceable guy. Like, I know Melker Karlsson gets a lot of hate, and I think, I think that definitely boils back to price tag. Melker Karlsson's a serviceable guy. I understand, like, I don't completely get the hate there. Like, he's a serviceable fourth liner. He's not amazing, but for fourth line, like, you kind of know what you're going to get with Melker Karlsson. I understand it a little bit, but I sometimes think it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, we always have to have the player that we're going to kick around. Yeah. And Melker Karlsson just kind of, he's our kick around guy.
Yeah.
Because Dalton Prout's not playing.
Right, and that's the sucky thing, is he is a good player. He's just maybe paid a little bit too much, and obviously the contract skews everything, because I think if it's the same kind of thing, if say Melker Karlsson is a $1 million player instead of a $2 million player, I don't think anybody has anything to say.
Right, and and again, I don't think, like, I know a lot of people say, like, Melker Karlsson's holding people out of the lineup, and you know what, maybe I need to do a deeper dive into the numbers, but I feel like it kind of goes back to the thing I said with Brodzinski, right? It's like the chasm between him and one of these other guys isn't the significant. Like, it's not like we're playing, Melker Karlsson instead of Joe Sakic.
Right. I
don't know. I don't know. I guess I'm just defending everyone today. I'm just trying to be completely different. Maybe I'm just like broken, and I have to just defy everyone.
Hey, you know what? Everybody's trying their best.
Fair enough.
They're doing their best.
They're doing their best, damn it.
No, but I think, like, kind of like what we said at the top of this segment, I don't think anybody's been bad. I just think there's just some guys who need to be more good, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so let's talk about some other quick around the league stuff first, because I think we've hammered the Sharks. I think for everything, without like actually discussing games, I think we've covered the Sharks pretty good for the first 8 games. I think I don't know. I think we had a good conversation. Nico Hischier signs a 7-year, $7.25 million AAV extension with the New Jersey Devils. He's currently playing the last year of his DLC, obviously.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I already know how Kevin Lacey feels about that contract, but I would like to see him type how he feels about it, because I think we would all get a kick out of it. But
all right,
I'm not I mean, I think he'll get there, but he is definitely not there yet.
Right. I mean, this is kind of par for the course for a lot of these guys, right? Like, there are some guys who I think have signed these deals that are absolutely going to be worth that money for sure. But then the rest of, like, there's other guys where it's like, well, hey, I'm a second round pick too, so give me money. I mean, it's not, I feel like it's pretty in line with what Laine got.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the term, obviously. I think Laine didn't sign for a lot of years, right? But the money is right around Laine.
Yeah, but they're two very different players. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like Kevin's saying, Hischier has 39 goals in 2 years, while Patrick Laine has 39 goals in his sleep.
Yes.
And so I'm with Kevin on this. Kevin and I have had this conversation many times before, where now we're not seeing contracts where it's like, what have you done for me lately? It's more, what will you do for me? And this one, Nico Hischier, same thing with Clayton Keller as well, are very much, what will you do for me? Even Jacob Trouba to a lesser extent. there are these contracts of what will you do for me, and I think too. I
mean, Jacob Trouba is more of an established guy.
Right. But I think Nico Hischier, I think he will be worth this contract one day. I mean, he's obviously he went number 1 overall for a reason, and he's shown flashes of playing really well. I mean, his first 2 seasons in the NHL, he had 99 points, which is decent, right?
Right.
Maybe if he puts up 99 points in a single season, then we're having a different conversation. But I just think, I don't know, I want to see more from him. And right now, only 2 assists through the first 5 games. It's not a good look. Of course,
that
the whole
been
Devils
horrendous.
team. Yeah, the Devils have been just abhorrent to start the season. But I think, I don't know. I mean, he's. I think they're having him. I think he's with Nikita Gusev right now, who, is obviously a good player to play with. I'd like to see more from him. I think he'll be worth the contract one day. I just don't like it right now.
Yeah, it seems like a little much right now. I mean, it's again though, but the problem is now it's kind of in line with what guys are getting, high draft picks are getting coming off their entry level deal. And if you're the Devils, I mean, you're the Devils. I mean, everything is kind of just not looking great to start the season. I mean, you go in, you bring in PK Subban, and you get off to this start. Part of me just you just make this deal to just change the narrative around the team, just change the talking point.
give people something to talk about.
Well, I mean, I wonder if that's like a part of it, right? Like, Kevin saying, "Oh, Marcus Sorensen had as many goals as Nico Hischier last season. Let's not give him 7." Obviously, ceiling and age are different factors here, but it's a good point. Like, some of these guys are getting money. It's hard because if you're the team, right, you're going to gamble that the player's going to be worth the money if you can get them to that term, because you don't want to turn around and be like, okay, here's your bridge. Oh God, now I have to give you $10 million. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're like a team like the Devils, who, they spend money, but they don't spend money like a lot of the other teams do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, if say they got Hischier on, like a 3x5, I think that would have been a great deal for them. But then in 3 years, when all of a sudden it's like, I want 8x12, it's like, right. Oh God, so now I think it's a good, it's a good long-term, it's a long-term bet, but it's still a bet. And, a lot has to go right for him. But he's still young. I mean, he's still young 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the sky's the limit for this kid, but I mean, there's, there are the cautionary tales of high draft picks that just never, that never become anything significant. Like, if he's if we're talking, year 3 and he's still a 40 point guy, 50 point guy, that's not going to look very good.
No. And they have the luxury of having a lot of cap space as well. Like,
yeah, they do.
Even with that extension, they've got almost $24 million in cap space for next season.
Right. And then obviously, some of the questions in the chat, like, does Taylor Hall stare? Does he go? It's going to be interesting. Obviously, I think this year's they have to prove to Taylor Hall that they're going to be a competitive team. Taylor Hall, coming from, like, he's not going to sit on, if I'm Taylor Hall, I don't want to long-term commit to a team that's probably going to be in the bottom of the league. I don't know. It's especially with what you've gone through to get to where you are. Man, I don't want that. Like, it's kind of like Taylor Hall kind of traveling the same road as Evander Kane right now.
Yeah.
Before Evander Kane signed in San Jose, I mean, he was, he bounced from the Jets that weren't really good when he was there to the Sabres who weren't good. Then, he gets the Shark, or Atlanta even before, Atlanta obviously being the Jets first, becomes Winnipeg, not really good, goes to Buffalo, again, not really good, and then finally gets to San Jose, gets to play some playoff hockey. So, I mean, like, if Taylor Hall's very much on that same path right now, where you have to imagine if the Devils can't show him something, I mean, he's going to be gone.
Yeah, I agree. And I wouldn't be surprised, especially if this season for the Devils continues the way it is. I wouldn't be surprised if, how many years he's been in the NHL and it hasn't gone well for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he wound up signing, like, with a team that is like a lock to be a good team.
Yeah. Valentin Zykov for the Golden Knights gets a 20-game PED suspension. It was interesting because I remember when last year when Schmidt got suspended, it's really night and day from when he got suspended, where, Zykov kind of came out and said, I don't know how this got in my body, but it's my responsibility. I take it. Whereas like Schmidt was like, this is garbage. I'm going to fight this. And this is the worst thing ever. It's really night and day.
Well, I think a lot of what that is from too, because I read on Twitter the day he got suspended, he said to the media, this was a shock and, I don't know how this got there. But supposedly the day before it was announced, he told Vegas that he knew it was there. So there's something not firing there. But so, and Kevin bringing that up as well. Interesting that McPhee had Schmidt's back and threw Zykov under the bus. I wonder if in their eyes it's because Zykov kind of played it down in the media, where he was like, oh, I don't know what happened, even though he does know what happened. So that could be it. But I mean,
yeah, maybe I was too hard. Like, I wonder if this, like, if it's like what situation, because I know when I first I know I really hammered Schmidt last year for this. And now I'm starting to wonder, maybe I was too hard on Schmidt, just based on the even to this day, Schmidt like is completely pissed off about that situation to this day.
Yeah.
Where, Zykov kind of just takes the suspension. Really unfortunate for Zykov, guy who's bounced around a little bit. But I mean, look, you gotta, you can't break the rules. The NHL for it's really hard to find something that the NHL can suspend you for. Their list is apparently laughable compared to the, compared to the world body. But yeah.
Well, considering, doing cocaine is 3 games.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course, because oh man, painful. Painful. No. Jerry asking, is this a larger Vegas issue? I don't think so. I mean, the team obviously, the team's going to try and give you the information to stay on the straight and narrow. And I think that, if this was really a team issue, we would see a lot more guys getting suspended than in 2 years, right? Like, the team, in my opinion, like, the team can only do so much, right? Like, the team, George McPhee isn't going to follow you home and make sure that, you're not injecting yourself. Like, there's a certain part where these are grown men and they have to take responsibility for what they've done. I'm sure the team tests as well. I'm not sure how the doping exactly works. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I just feel like the fact that it's been 2 Vegas players, I don't think that speaks so much to the team as much as it just does the fact that those 2 individuals had to play for Vegas. I don't think this isn't a Vegas Golden Knights problem that I think a lot of people would like to make that out to be.
No, and I think a lot of people too. I think a lot of people are quick to make that generalization as well. Where as much as the Vegas Strip is the place to go, get wild and tear it up, right? I would say probably 80 to 90% of Las Vegas is just a normal city.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's anything to read into it. I mean, like you said, like, the NHL's banned substance list is laughable compared to the IIHF.
Yes.
I'd be curious to see how many NHL players would get dinged if they all of a sudden wanted to go play like at the World Championship or something like that.
I can't remember who said it. It was on a podcast a while back now, some years back now. And I can't remember which player was being interviewed, but they said like, cause they were asked like, do you think that a lot of players are doping? And they're like, yeah, watch who shrinks when it's an Olympic year.
Mm-hmm. Like,
so I think that there's, there's definitely shenanigans in every sport. And, I think that the fact that 2 Vegas things get nailed, I think that's, it sucks for Vegas, but I think it's a player issue, and I think players just need to be smarter. they gotta be, you gotta be smarter. And this is the other thing too. It's like, the other thing that always comes up too is like, oh, well, this is why there shouldn't be a team in Vegas. Like, do you think that Vegas is the only city in the world you can get your PEDs or your cocaine, or like, you telling me you can't get cocaine in New York? And I know I've said this 100 times, like, but it's like, you can't get cocaine in New York. You can't get cocaine. You can get cocaine in Columbus, I'm sure. Columbus is pretty tame as far as NHL cities go. I'm sure you get plenty of cocaine in Columbus.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's everywhere. And like I said earlier, I think because it's Vegas, I think people, make a lot of generalizations like that.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's much more to it. It's unfortunate. Hopefully the other players take notice and they figure out what they should be taking, what they shouldn't be taking. And, that's that. Obviously we alluded at the top of the show, some really hot starts for Edmonton, Buffalo, even Anaheim, I think, is off to a better start than I thought they'd be. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you're monitoring their game, but they're actually losing.
So. Oh, well, there you go. See, put them down and they're starting to lose. Good.
Go back to fifth place.
Go back to fifth place where you belong. Damn it, Ducks. Couple of teams aren't off to the great start. Like, I didn't think like all these teams would be like world beaters or anything, but I'm really surprised by the Dallas Stars so far.
Yeah,
and I'm not just picking on them because of Pavelski. Like, let's get that full disclosure. I'm not just gonna pick on them and be like, yeah, see, told you we shouldn't have signed Pavelski, you effing idiots. Like, that's not my point here.
Well, if we didn't sign Karlsson, he would have come back, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm shocked too. Like, especially because their team got better compared to last year.
Right, and they supposedly have the goalie now, and but I don't even know what to make of this team so far. I don't know. Yeah. And I don't know if Jim Montgomery's in trouble yet, because again, like, I think we kind of said at the top, like, you don't want to get too knee jerky with these things. Sometimes, you put a bunch of new players in the mix and things take a little time to figure out. But man, like, Dallas, they need to show some positive signs here, because like, really there hasn't been a lot of positives so far. Like, they've had a couple of things, but like, whereas like the Sharks like have consistently gotten better after their start, I can't say that for Dallas.
No, Dallas, it's been a rough it's been a rough sled for them all year. The only guy who's really done well for them, and I know Kevin will agree with me here, is Rope Hintz. I mean, he's got 6 points, or 6 goals rather, through the first 10 games of the season. I mean, he's been on fire, the whole season. He leads them in scoring, and I think that, Kevin Hintz is solid. I think the defense has been fine. I hate to say, like, I hate to identify one guy, but is it at all possible that ever since their, like, whoever, their CEO or whoever,
sure,
lit up Jamie Benn, is it at all possible Jamie Benn might be a little rattled from that, because he didn't really do a whole lot to recover after that, and then this year he's not having the greatest start either.
As a fantasy owner of Jamie Benn, I'm very unhappy with Jamie Benn right now.
That was my exact sentiment last year. I thought I finessed everybody getting him in round 3. He didn't do anything for me last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's situations where your top guys have to be better, and that's, it's easy to say it. Sometimes it's even cliche to say, but Dallas is a team where their top guys have to be better.
Yeah, 100%. And Sagan and Radulov clearly, tuned into it. I'm not really sure what's going on with Jamie Benn.
Yeah. What about Florida so far?
Florida Panthers, I feel like every year is their year to finally step out of the darkness, and aside from scoring a lot of goals, they've not really been doing that well to sign or to stop a lot of goals, and they did sign Brian Boyle this morning.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
I just don't know, like, the Panthers have a really good roster. I don't know what their problem is. Like, Bobrovsky's goals against average is 4.07 right now. Like, that's just unreal. When you look at how many guys, I mean, so, the Panthers are letting in all these goals per game, but they're also, their score, I mean, they've got 7, 8, 9 guys who are scoring at a higher than half a point a game pace.
Right. Yeah. And I should say, like, when I mentioned the Panthers here, I think, the Panthers are 3-2-3. So it's not completely, they're not completely abhorrent. They're not the Ottawa Senators, right. But like, this is a team, obviously, I think we expected more from so far. I think, like I am more concerned about the 4-2-3 Florida Panthers than I am about the 4-3-1 Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this: what do we think about? And this is kind of on the different side of everything, but I mean, we all expected the LA Kings to suck, right? But yes, they're really bad this year. Like I've watched a decent amount of Kings games just by virtue of them being on at 7 Pacific, and they have the same record as the Sharks. Same, they've actually scored more goals as well. But there are so many instances where they've just looked awful, and maybe yes, Giordano with the Macho Man elbow off the top rope, that was fantastic.
Fantastic.
This is obviously a very teeny tiny concern that I have, but like if LA keeps playing this poorly, like they're going to be in position to draft a really good player coming up, next summer, and I don't know. It's going to be
my concern with the Los Angeles Kings is and obviously I'm not a Kings fan at all, and I hope they crash and burn, except for but somehow trade that first round pick away so we don't have to get killed by some top ranked guy coming in. The thing that would be concerning to me is the cliff, the absolute cliff that one Jonathan Quick has fallen off of.
Yeah.
Like right now, again, early on, but like, 506 goals against average at 8.28 save percentage. Yikes.
Yeah. They, it's not looking good for them.
Yeah.
And it is kind of scary to be a Sharks fan because, like we've seen it now, like Edmonton gets these picks. Anaheim's got a bunch of really good players. Arizona, Vancouver. It's like, if LA gets Alexis Lafreniere, like, it's just gonna be another team who gets prospects while the Sharks don't.
Yeah, and that's a real scary thing, right? Because, like, obviously, like some of these teams, like, and the Kings already went through a rebuild cycle. Like they're on their second rebuild cycle now
in this century.
In the salary cap era, they are on their second rebuild cycle. And, I understand Doug Wilson's philosophy. You can't just bottom it out and, he won't do it. But I mean, I'm going to be really angry if the Kings suck for 3 years and then come back and win another multiple Stanley Cups and we're stuck on the last years of Burns, Karlsson, like, ugh.
And we're talking about 4 goals in 4 minutes.
Right? Like, ugh, man, like it's just, it's tough sledding there. And it's funny because like you said, identical records, but completely, they couldn't be more different teams right now.
And the guys at the top, like, Anze Kopitar is doing Anze Kopitar things, and like Ilya Kovalchuk is having a really good year. Dustin Brown, I still stand by it. I think Daryl Sutter getting fired was the best thing that could have happened to Dustin Brown, because in those 2 years he's played some very good hockey, and Tyler Toffoli is obviously playing well. But beyond those 4 guys I mentioned, like it's not pretty. And you talk about guys going off cliffs. When LA made the playoffs and met up with Vegas in the first round, like Jeff Carter dragged their dead corpse to the playoffs. Yeah, and he's not even a factor anymore.
No, he's 3 points I think so far for Jeff Carter.
Yep, 3 points.
Like, brutal. We got a question in the chat about Calgary. What's your thoughts there?
I was very critical of them signing Cam Talbot only because it seemed like David Riddick was finally going to get the net. Mm-hmm. And I was right in my assessment because Cam Talbot has been Cam Talbot. Your tweet about not losing to a team with Cam Talbot obviously is going to stand the test of time.
I love that tweet. Yeah,
but I don't know. I mean, they're still a really good team, right? I mean, as much as I'm not a fan of his, like Johnny Gaudreau is still a hell of a player, and Matt Tkachuk and Elias Lindholm and Sean Monahan and Mark Giordano, all these guys are really good guys, but they're in a similar situation to where the Sharks are, where their top guys are top and the bottom guys, they need to do more. I mean, Sam Bennett, I don't think when he went number 4 overall, he thought he was going to only have 1 goal this year, but here he is. And obviously getting Lucic was a disaster.
Yeah, see, that's always kind of been my take on Calgary. The summer was like, you're a playoff team, and then you take on basically Edmonton's 2 biggest problems. In Cam Talbot and Milan Lucic. And then obviously, look, I think no matter what happened with wherever they had to get rid of James Neal. It just wasn't a fit. James Neal had to go. And they were going to lose. I think they were going to lose regardless of where they sent him. That was going to come back and look terrible for them. And they were in a place where they just had no choice. They had to move James Neal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So they were going to lose that regardless, but man, to do that to your division, your provincial rival is just, it's horrible. It's just bad. I mean, the fact that you had to take Milan Lucic back, I mean, that's just.
Well, and if they had sent him to a division rival and it was same, whatever, you could deal with it. But the fact that he is the best goal scorer in the league right now.
Right. And you have Milan Lucic to show for it.
Well, and somebody was, I think it was, I don't remember who it was, but it was on I think it was on Leafs Net,
Mm-hmm.
they were trying to say, well, yeah, Lucic or Neal's got these goals and that's great, but Lucic is standing up for his teammates. And I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me.
Well, I guess someone's got to do it. But yeah, no, it's a mess. I mean, they're not Cam Talbot. I think David Rich is a guy that needs to get more starts, and he has gotten most of the starts. But geez, yeah, they need to be better. This is a team that should be better than it is, and I think they just purposely sabotage themselves for no reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, a lot of people are rattled by the fact that St. Louis won the cup last year with, quote unquote toughness. And that's true that they did. But, I've made the point multiple times over the past summer. It's 9 times out of 10, the skilled team beats the tough team, and St. Louis winning the cup just so happened to be 1 out of 10. I guarantee you the Stanley Cup final, not finals, Kevin, little inside joke we have. I guarantee you this year's Stanley Cup final is going to be 2 skill teams, and the hard hitting, meat and potatoes guys are going to be nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even if it is a tough team versus the skill team, I think, we've seen the skill team win that more often. I mean, Tampa, St. Louis, I mean, there's so much lightning in a bottle with that team. It's such a weird, it's never going to happen again, right? The team, the team that's, in the bottom of the basement in January is going to come back and win this thing. It's such a, I mean, it's an amazing story. It's definitely a story that I think, we'll look back on in 10 years and go, yeah, man, remember that? That was wild. But I mean, I really feel bad for anyone who is trying to build their team to copycat that.
Well, and that's that's one of the things that was cited when Calgary picked up Milan Lucic.
Of course it was.
Was they wanted to get tougher, right? And that's all well and good. By all means, stand up for yourself. But I don't know about you, Ian, but I watched 6 out of 6 of those games they played against Colorado last spring.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado was flying around them. They could have had 12 forwards who are all tough guys, and it wasn't going to help. And that's, I feel like, if the other team has the puck and they're just blowing by you, a guy who body checks for a living is not going to be any help.
Word. Jerry asking a question. One question I have is, has there ever been a series of 5 Sharks games, all with 2 full days off between them, like the current stretch? I can't remember that in any years. I don't know. I'd have to go and look. I don't know. I really don't pay much attention to the schedule.
It has. I do agree with Jerry there. It has felt very weird, because I know after the game when the Sharks played Carolina, which was last Wednesday,
right?
I was kind of thinking, all right, Friday's going to come, another game, and we still had to wait another day till Saturday, and then even then the game with Buffalo ended, and we have to wait till Tuesday. So there's definitely been more days off in the start of the schedule. But if I'm remembering correctly, I think I don't know about other teams, but I think the Sharks specifically, their schedule was tweaked a little bit so that, it wasn't, because in the past the Sharks schedule, in November and March has been very home heavy, and in October and February has been very road heavy. And I don't think that's totally been 100% remedied, but I think the league is making an effort to kind of move that around, and maybe that's where the extra days off come through. But what that tells me is that there's going to be a lot of instances post All-Star break where you've got a back-to-back.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like, I remember, after the Carolina game, one of the biggest comments I got was, oh, well, Carolina was on a back-to-back, which I'm like, yeah, but the Sharks generally play more back-to-backs than everyone else. So like, if the Sharks take advantage of a team on a back-to-back, I'm not going to complain.
They don't ask how, they just ask how many.
Right, exactly, and that's it, right? Like, they exactly that. They don't ask how, they just ask how many. And at the end of the day, 2 points is 2 points. No one cares if your 2 points come on the, if you take advantage of a team on a back-to-back or not. All right, so we'll close out on this question. Sorry, go ahead.
While we're on that, I think that set of the schedule for Carolina was stupid, because they played LA on Tuesday, flew and played San Jose on Wednesday, and then flew back to SoCal and played Anaheim on Friday. I think that was the dumbest thing ever.
Like, when I don't know arena availabilities and stuff. Like, I am sure that job is completely unenviable.
Oh, 100%. But like, when I read that, I thought it was a typo, because I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah. No, it's kind of, because usually that's the thing, right? You get the SoCal back-to-back, and then they come up play the Sharks.
Yeah.
With rest. Because always. And then the Sharks play all the back-to-backs.
And play the back-to-backs in different time zones, too.
All right. So, upcoming road trip. Any thoughts on the upcoming roadie?
My thoughts are, I hope we win most of the games. Because we got Buffalo again. I thought the Sharks played a really good game against Buffalo. I think they can, I think if they just play that way again, I think, Buffalo's the best team in the league right now. And say what you want about Buffalo and if they'll make the playoffs or if they won't, but right now this is the team to beat. And I think if the Sharks can play well, like they did on Saturday, I think they'll beat, Buffalo. It'll be close, but I think they can beat them. And, Toronto, the Sharks need to take advantage of these teams while they're having issues. Toronto is obviously missing John Tavares. Ottawa sucks. And, the Sharks historically do well against Montreal. So I think this road trip, this is a road trip where the Sharks can make up a lot of ground if they do what they need to do.
Yes.
Because if it's another thing where, they go into a 5-game road trip and the first 2 games they sleep through it, then it's not going to be fun.
Right, like the Buffalo game, I think if they can play a game like they played against Buffalo last game, they have a chance to win it. Like, they could have won last game. It's one of those things where just, Buffalo wins, and you kind of just throw your hands up and say, okay, it is what it is. So Buffalo, I think, that's going to be another tough game, but I think the Sharks can do well there. I agree with you. I think the Sharks should be able to do to make some they should be able to do some stuff against Montreal. I don't feel like that's that shouldn't be that shouldn't be a loss. I'm not saying it's an automatic win and they're just going to steamroll, but they should be competitive there. I'm not worried about I'm not worried about the Sharks playing Montreal. Like, Montreal, I think they're off to a decent start. They're 4-3-2. I mean, there's no reason that I mean, they lost to Minnesota. So, yeah, okay, the Sharks should beat them. All right, I've changed my mind. They lost to Minnesota the last game. The Sharks should come in and thump them. I think the Sharks should be able to play. I think they matched stylistically. I think they should do well against Montreal. Mm-hmm. That Buffalo game is going to be tough. Toronto's a team. They're doing all right. I mean, they're obviously they've gotten off to a better start now that Tavares is out. So there's that they should be able to exploit a little bit. But man, Toronto's fast, and I think that's where I'm concerned with Toronto is the speed and how the Sharks are going to match that speed, because we've seen the Sharks have trouble with speed in the past, and that team is just speed personified with Nylander and Matthews and Marner. I mean, there's a lot of weapons on that team, and if the Sharks can't get their defensive game together, that's going to be a long night.
Even then, too, like another team, just by happenstance of how the schedule lines out, another team I've watched a lot, their third line is probably the best third line in the NHL right now. Mm-hmm. So I think obviously you have to worry about Matthews and Marner and Nylander and Kapanen, but their bottom six is just as good as any bottom six right now in the league. So I would almost be more conscious of them. And the thing going for the Sharks in their favor is obviously Toronto has had a lot of trouble, preserving leads, but mm-hmm. also, not allowing a goal in the first 5 minutes. I think the first 4 or 5 games of the season, the Leafs allowed a goal on the first shot of the game, or it was a really ridiculous stat.
Which is crazy because in my opinion, Anderson's a guy that can steal a game.
Absolutely 100%. I think Anderson is one of the best goalies in the league.
Okay, and then so let's see here. I had the schedule in front of me and then I moved off of it. Okay, so then Toronto and then Ottawa, which I'm going to be at. I mean, they better beat Ottawa. Just because I'm going to be there, and that's going to be a fun 3 days because it's going to be 10 hours. Hang out in Ottawa for the day, watch the game, sleep, go home 10 hours. But I'm so excited. I'm really, they should take care of business against this Ottawa team, but a team that has lost that many games, unfortunately, is kind of always due for a win, and you get a little bit nervous. But I'm expecting the Sharks are not going to let me down in that game. I think they're going to be okay. And then that Boston game, that Boston game is going to be tight.
Oh yeah,
it's not going to be. I mean, this is if they come back. If they come home from this road trip with 3 wins, I think it's successful. I think anything less than 3 wins, I don't like it for them. But they should be able to get 3 wins here, right? And then they come home. Yeah, they come home against Winnipeg. So I feel like 3 games, 3 wins, is my bar for success on that road trip.
I think that's fair. I can agree with that.
I think anything less than 3, I'm going to be disappointed. But there's definitely some, there's going to be some concern there, obviously.
What if they lose every game except the one you're at?
Well, I'll be happy that they won the one I'm at, and then, well, then we'll go back to burning things down, and it'll be back to burning it down. Let's be honest, everything's kind of kosher now, but if the Sharks don't win a game on that road trip and they're, and now you're talking about the Sharks being 3-10 at that point, that's bad. Bad.
Yeah, especially those teams, like we said, they definitely don't have, they all have their issues that they have to deal with, and so it's on the Sharks to take advantage of them.
Absolutely, and I think that the Sharks, if they keep playing the way they are, I think 3 games is a completely manageable task. But we've been doing this forever, so we need to. Okay. Sometimes if you idle, you don't chat for a while, it might send you down to AFK. I will adjust how long it takes for that to happen.
If I
won't do that.
If I see somebody dropping down there, I'm making it a point to make sure I move them back up just so they don't miss anything.
Yeah, I will take a look at the timer there. That's my fault. Especially obviously because we ramble on for way too long. This happens. But anyway, final thoughts, because we do need to get out here because we have been on for a while. And thank you. Yes, I'm exciting for my trip to Ottawa. I cannot wait. And I think for everyone, again, I can't express enough gratitude to the people that made this possible. This is a lifelong bucket list thing for me.
Yeah, no, I'm obviously excited for you, just because I know, you live 3,000 miles away from San Jose, and you're probably one of the biggest Sharks fans I know. So obviously I'm really excited for you and Jen to go and get to do that. So it's obviously, it's going to be huge for you guys. I think you're going to have a lot of fun. And also I'm telling you, all of our listeners, please tweet the Sharks and tell them to win for Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. Win for Ian, guys. That's all I ask. All right. Any final thoughts?
Well, Forepaws had a question. I don't know if you want to answer it really quick. Mm-hmm. She wants to know how you're a Sharks fan.
I can answer this question quick. I've done this a lot. I've got this answer down to like a science. So basically, as it happens, I grew up being a Montreal Canadiens fan, because my dad was a Montreal Canadiens fan. Obviously, at the time that I decided to be a Sharks fan, the last time the Canadiens had won a cup was, I think, the year I was born. Maybe they won one after that. I'm not sure. I believe before 93, I think the last one they won was in 79. I'd have to go double check that. So basically, when the Sharks came into the league, I just immediately fell in love with the colors, the logo. I just thought this is the coolest thing ever. And basically I never, my dad would always tell me about these glory days that I will never get to see live, right? Because obviously they all happened before I was born. And I thought when the Sharks came in, I kind of had this epiphany of, wouldn't it be cool if I cheered for this team and I'm going to live this team's history? Like, this team's history is going to be something that I lived through. It's not going to be, I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, but everything that they did happen before I was born, or a Maple Leafs fan. And, there's generations of Maple Leafs fans that haven't seen a Stanley Cup victory. I was going to see the history, for better or worse, from day one. And I stuck to it, and Jamie Baker goal, obviously, like, I think that was like the final hook. Like, I was pretty much in, and, but obviously those first two seasons were rough, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm staying up late trying to watch hockey games. But then that Jamie Baker goal, man, I never looked back. And here I am.
Meanwhile, I was born in San Jose, and my parents were Sharks fans. That's how I'm a Sharks fan.
So there you go.
Less glorious.
Less glorious. I mean, we all get that. It doesn't really matter how you get there. It's just the fact that you're here, right? I mean, that's the important thing, I think.
Pretty much.
I mean, that's the important thing. So, well, I don't know. We're going to figure it out, okay? Because obviously, like, I'm going to have my phone with me, but, like, phone check-ins are really crappy audio. So I'm going to, I'm gonna try and do something on After Dark where I'm probably gonna try and check in from Ottawa, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm not making any promises, but I'll definitely, I'll do something. I'm gonna take a lot of pictures and stuff, and we'll do something. I'm sure we'll figure out something that we can do, and just so I can kind of share the experience with you guys as well. So there we go.
Hashtag win it for Ian.
All right. So we're super deep into this thing. We really need to shut this down. So I appreciate everyone listening. Again, you can always find us on the YouTube. You can find Kevin Lacey at Kevin Lacey 22. You find a bunch of underscores for Mr. Puck _over _ for Drew Weber, at Hockey Jerk for my other half of the awesome podcast tonight. You can find me at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine. I'm going to get the audio for this uploaded to YouTube for those people that still, for some reason, want to listen to the audio on YouTube. You can find this on your favorite podcatcher. And I promise you, once I get back from Ottawa, we're going to try and get this locked down so we have this on a more regular basis. I think now that things are going over, now that things are kind of getting settled, I think we're going to get into a good spot where we can start doing this more regularly again, and it won't be a month between shows. This has kind of been an anomaly to start. I'm promising you guys that I'm going to make sure that this continues to be a regular thing. So with that, thank you very much. Good night, and we will see you next time on the Teal Tinted Glasses podcast.